And hello, Jets fans, and welcome to the latest edition of Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets. If you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our latest content, all the latest on the New York Jets. And if you'd like to listen to us wherever podcasts are available, we are available on all podcasting platforms, and we are coming on with breaking news that it appears that one of the Jets' key pieces of the offensive line is likely out for the season. Not only what does this mean in the short term, but the long-term impact of the franchise. Now, a little full disclosure, I was debating whether to come on when the news broke about Alijah Vera Tucker's injury, but I wanted to wait a little bit because of another injury earlier in camp. If you remember the Justin Fields injury, there was the report that he was carted off the field. We all had our stomachs in our throats as Jet fans. So this was the one reason I waited a little bit longer to come on the air, especially when it was stated that the Jets are seeking a second opinion. We will be keeping up to date on all that latest. So again, if we get any breaking news on Alijah Vera Tucker, we will let you know. But it is clear that at the very least, he is out for a long-term period for the Jets, probably the whole season. It appears to be a tricep, and from what we've heard, this wasn't necessarily in a practice scrum. This was in a one-on-one drill, and it is not the same triceps that AVT tore back in 2022, which cost him the end of the 2022 season. So I'll get to the long-term impact. And again, super chat to jump to the front of the line. Would love to hear your thoughts about Alijah Vera Tucker, your thoughts on the Jets offensive line, on how they should proceed going forward. But I want to get into the immediate impact on the offensive line. And let's be frank, this is a massive impact because coming into this season, Alijah Vera Tucker was this team's most veteran player on the offensive line. He was arguably this group's best run blocker. And this was a season that Alijah Vera Tucker had, let's be honest, a ton to play for. This was a contract year, and his fifth-year option going to be 27 when he hits the free agency market. So there was a lot on the line here for AVT going into this season. And through the preseason, he looked great, especially in the run blocking game, which is what this team wants to do. So let's get to it. This is a massive loss, even if it is for a couple of months. By the time he gets back, it will likely be at the back half of the season if the Jets get lucky. But it appears, let's treat it as he's not going to be on the Jets this season. What this means is that the Jets now have to go with the next man up. Likely what will happen is Joe Tippmann will move to guard. Now, I've been someone on this channel that I have advocated moving Tippmann to guard. There's been a lot of debate on what's his best long-term position. Now, I think we're going to get a lot from this regime and how they feel about Joe Tippmann, where they put him. Again, he played a lot of guard in the preseason when John Simpson wasn't playing. And coming out of college, he was someone that I projected to be a little bit better of a guard because of the athleticism that he had and because of his size. Tippmann is a taller center, so sometimes it's hard for him to get that leverage. And we've all known about the snap issue, which, again, he had one bad snap in a game this summer, but it's seemingly like the snap issue has not been as big of an issue. So it looks like they're going to move him over to guard likely. They have Myers, second-place center, who they signed from the Packers, has over 50 starts at the center position. They could also move Myers potentially to guard. I've seen a lot of people speculating on what they could do on the outside. But if you look at the Jets' depth right now, Max Mitchell is a flexing guard / offensive lineman that they can move around. Josh Myers in the middle. Another thing we haven't talked about is Xavier Newman. Newman played a lot of guard as well. Is there a world where Tippmann starts at center and Newman starts the season at guard? We'll have to see come Sunday. So that will be something to keep an eye on. Now, again, you look at the depth of tackle. Chukwuma Okorafor is that right tackle, which behind Armand Menbu. And look, the person I feel the worst for outside of Alijah Vera Tucker is probably Armand Menbu, because Armand Menbu, I think, is going to get targeted, especially being a rookie player. Now, again, I want to preface this by saying I do think he's going to have his struggles at times this year, especially in pass protection. And people have to give him time to develop. I look at Andrew Thomas, I think, is an unbelievable example. Offensive lineman, the difference between going in college and now going here in the pros, even though he played at the SEC level, is a massive difference. And you're going up against arguably one of the better lines in the first week against the Steelers. So I understand the frustration and why people are nervous. I'm nervous as well. But overall, yes, this is a devastating injury. Yes, this is to arguably one of their best offensive linemen, but it's one of the few places where, yes, this hurts the Jets, but I don't think this would have been the biggest loss. I think there's other positions where they have even worse depth, especially the edge position on the defense. I think there's other positions, if they had an injury that this had happened, it would be a lot worse. And again, I understand the frustration too, where people are using the CURSE word with the Jets. And look, this is a freak injury. This is an injury you never want to see. And I understand that it feels like this happens only to the Jets franchise. But this is something that teams go through. Guys in preseason, we've seen guys tear their ACL running. I mean, Chuck Clark was a great example with the Jets. He was hurt in practice, not even practice, training in the offseason. So I understand the frustration. Again, I see your comments coming through right now. Super chat to jump to the front of the line. Want your visceral reactions to this loss for the Jets. And look, it's frustrating because AVT's a great guy. He's obviously respected in the locker room, named a team captain, was someone that they've even talked about having an extension for during this preseason with how well he's doing. So again, this is devastating for the Jets. But it's also equally devastating for Alijah Vera Tucker, who has dealt with so much adversity, and it finally felt like this was going to be the year he put the pieces together to help earn him one of those massive contracts. And we will get to the long-term ramifications. Short-term, it seems like the Jets are going to do something with either Myers or Tittman kicking into the outside or in, but we will see here as well. Drones talking about AVT is out of here long-term. Tittman this season, so I guess, Drones, you're moving Tittman to guard. We'll see what the Jets do on Sunday. I'm very curious to see what they will do. And I get the frustration with the drafting on the offensive line. And look, AVT is a frustrating one. Jets traded up, obviously, in the draft to get him, so I get the frustration. And I do think you bring up a good point, Drones, and I will get to that in a second. And I do think he will eventually get paid, and I'll explain why. So let's look, as Drones was touching about, and I think it's a great transition into this. And again, Super Chat, jump to the front of the line, taking your comments and questions. A lot of people are asking the short-term questions, but I also think it's very important to talk about the long-term question with Alijah Vera Tucker. Coming into this season, this was one of the talking points that I've had and I've discussed with a lot of Jet fans that I know, and it's the debate about what to do with Alijah Vera Tucker long-term. And no matter how many times we had the debate, the thing I kept going back to, which I do think is important, is that he missed 33 games in his first 4 seasons. 33 games. If he misses this full season, which it looks like it will be the case, he will have missed 50 ball games. 50 out of potential 85 in his career. Alijah Vera Tucker is a great kid. He's got an incredible work ethic. He's someone that when he's on the field, he is an incredible player. The problem is availability is just as important, if not more important, than talent. We've seen guys in this league who have immense talent, but can never stay healthy. And unfortunately, I think Alijah Vera Tucker is one of those positions. So now the tough question, what happens long-term? I think the only way that Alijah Vera Tucker returns to the Jets in 2026 is on a 1-year type of deal, prove-it kind of contract, where maybe the Jets give him a big 1-year offer, but it's for a 1-year contract, and his hopes are, if I go out and prove I can play a full season at the age of 27, maybe that will help me get a long-term contract. But here's the problem with that theory and why I don't think it's going to work. Every free agency period, we see guards who aren't as talented as Alijah Vera Tucker get massive amounts of money because you have bad teams in the bottom tier of the NFL, the bottom 10 tier, who have a ton of cap space, who have a ton of money to burn, and they look at it and go, well, we're probably drafting a quarterback. We're probably drafting a lot of high-end players in the draft. We don't want to use one of those picks on an offensive lineman. Let's take a shot on Alijah Vera Tucker. And I think that the Jets will have a tough decision to make because you have John Simpson, who, if he can stay healthy this year, if the Jets invest in him to be a guard long-term, they can invest in Tittman long-term, guard or center. And then they figure out they go guard or center in the next draft, but maybe a 3rd or 4th round pick to hopefully develop. The other thing I would say too is we always see this in free agency where a team will vastly overpay. Robert Hunt was a great example with the Dolphins, got massively overpaid at guard. I could just see a team just taking a shot on Alijah Vera Tucker and saying, look, he's a former first-round pick. He's someone that clearly has a good work ethic. He's a good kid. We're not sure about the health. We'll give him a massive contract, but we'll be smart and we'll front load the first 2 years of it. If we fully guarantee the first 2 years and maybe a small benefit, a small guarantee in the year 3, if he's not healthy the first 2 years, we can cut him after the first 2 years and it's not going to kill us, especially if we're drafting a young quarterback. If we're drafting a quarterback in the top half of the draft and we're not paying a quarterback, we can afford to invest in an offensive lineman and take a risk like that. I do think you're going to see a team do that with Alijah Vera Tucker. And if you're the Jets and the team's going to give a massive contract to your former guard and you can get a potential 3rd or 4th or 5th round compensation pick for someone that you're not sure about his health, I feel like the Jets will weigh that option. Now, again, I do think the Jets would love to have AVT back. It's clear he's respected and loved in this locker room. But the question is going to be, will he settle for a 1-year contract with the Jets? Or will he test free agency because his agent might say, look, you weren't healthy with the Jets. They're not comfortable giving you a long-term contract, but team X, Y, and Z is. And Alijah, with your injury history, I highly recommend you go out there and you take a long-term deal so you're set for life. Because if you take the 1-year deal with the Jets, and even though you know the system, you know the coaching staff, you know it's going to be a run-heavy scheme which fits your personality, the problem's going to be if you get hurt again, and the track record says you likely will, then teams are really going to look at you as damaged goods and see another year off the speedometer and go, you know what? He's not worth it. There will be a team that will then try to give him a 1-year contract, but I just do not see him being in the long-term plans for the Jets. And to be honest, it sucks. I'm just going to spell it out there. It sucks because this is a guy you've invested a lot in. This is a guy that's clearly a talented player when he's on the field. This is clearly a guy that cares about this team, kicking out to tackle when this team needed. This is just a frustrating day. This isn't someone like a Mekhi Becton who wasn't respected by the coaching staff, didn't listen to the coaching staff, and didn't put himself before the team. Mekhi, we think you're going to be a better right tackle than a left tackle because you have no footwork and you're vastly overweight. No. I'm only going to play left tackle. Hey, Alijah, we need you to go play right tackle because we're just decimated. No problem. I'll go do that. And it's frustrating, too, because when the initial news came out for me, I was a bit hopeful because this was an arm injury. If this was a lower body injury, especially with his Achilles, if this was a 3rd Achilles, I'm like, okay, he's done. He might be done completely. But with the arm, it looks like the tricep. And again, for people asking, it's not the same tricep that he hurt back in 2022. So look, it just sucks. It sucks for the Jets because you lose a great lineman. It sucks for Alijah Vera Tucker because this was probably his best chance to get a massive contract from the team he drafted in. It just sucks all around. It's frustrating, too, because you look at this kid and you say, you know what? This is a kid that really gets and works hard. But this is the NFL. The Jets were not going to make it through this season with all these guys on the roster. There's going to be guys that get hurt. There's going to be key guys that get hurt. We saw it last year. Jermaine got hurt. Michael Carter got hurt. There's going to be key pieces to this team that are going to get injured. It happens every single year. Part of the reason that Aaron Glenn is here and part of the thing he preaches is the next man up. He did it in Detroit last year. Now, again, Detroit had a much deeper roster than the Jets, so I understand that argument. But when you looked at the end of the season, what he was dealing with on that defense and the types of players he was just picking up off the street, that's the attitude you kind of need with this next man up attitude. It's not this woe is me attitude. It's, okay, this is an opportunity for someone. And this could be an opportunity for Tippmann. I've said it. When he started as a rookie at guard, he had one of the best PFF grades at right guard as a rookie. I thought he moves really well. He's a very good athlete, especially in space. This could be a great opportunity. Now, does it weaken your center position because Myers has to play all 17 games? It absolutely does. But this is also a chance for Darren Muji. Now, again, it's harder to get offensive linemen in here, but maybe you can keep an eye on the offensive line somewhere else. Again, they've already kind of done this. They've already moved off of Carter Warren. They made an effort to go out in the free agency market. They got Esa Pohl from Kansas City, who played very well in the preseason. Maybe this is a dark horse as well with Pohl too. Maybe this is someone that, if we see Myers is struggling, could Pohl be someone that kicks inside eventually to take the right guard position and allow Tippmann to go back to center? I mean, this is something we could keep an eye on. Pohl's a big body, of course. We know the tackle, 6'7", big, massive dude. But could that be a possibility as well? Could he kick inside a little bit? I mean, there's going to be different line combinations throughout this year. And look, to be frank, you're probably going to have another injury on the offensive line. That's just the National Football League. It's about finding guys that can fill in and making sure that you can get through with the guys that you have. And I understand this is a huge impact, because this is a guy who, once again, was going to be the leader of this offensive line with Alijah Vera Tucker. He's your best run blocker on a team where you want to run the ball and establish the line of scrimmage. But I look too, like, could that be a thing we're not talking about with Pohl? Again, I thought Pohl played very well in the preseason at tackle. He needs to work on his technique, but I look at him too, like the biggest problem he was having in college was the lateral foot quickness with some of the twitchier pass rushers. Could he be someone, again, big guy, 6'6", 6'7", 320, 325? Could he be an option? Now, again, I'm not saying at the beginning of the season, but as this season drags on, that could be someone to keep an eye on as well. Greg Rowell, again, Super Chat. Jump to the front of the line, make a donation to the channel so you can get more great content. Again, we'll be doing a season preview on Friday. Yeah, I'm hoping, Greg, Tippmann can be the hero. Drones, no funny, but Becton was probably better overall than AVT. Look, I think Becton had the better tools. Like, I'm not going to argue Becton had the better tools, but I think Alijah Vera Tucker had the better attitude. Tippmann can up his value big time. I do think, Greg, that is a big opportunity for Tippmann. I know last year at center left something to be desired. I still think he's a very good prospect. Who knows? A lot of people, a lot of scouts you talked to when he was coming out thought he'd be a better long-term guard than a center anyway. So Tippmann doesn't have to be a Pro Bowl guard. Can he just be a solid guard that can get out in space, push people in the run game, and not be a liability in pass pro? That's what this team needs, especially if he can establish the run. The biggest problem I have now with this is Myers at center, because Myers Tippmann's getting a push in the run game. Myers at center isn't getting as much, and now you wonder, too, with some of the plays, like maybe the tush push that you could have utilized. If you're not getting that push from the center position, it'll be something to keep an eye on. Now, I'm also curious, too, is there a chance that Simpson goes to right guard and Tippmann goes to left guard? Because, again, Tippmann was playing left guard in the preseason for Simpson. I don't think they will do that. But, again, we're still not here at the first game. We haven't seen the first offensive sets. So I'm very curious to see how they will divvy up the responsibilities on this offensive line. But it's frustrating, but in a way, too, you wonder, does this also give this team clarity? Because a debate we had is, who are the Jets going to divide up basically, and it's frustrating, too, because I understand where Jet fans are coming from, too, where they are just feel like we can't catch a break. And I get it, especially after the last two seasons. It feels like the Jets can never catch a break, and this feels like another opportunity where the Jets are not getting a break. But also, the NFL, you have the first injury report coming out now for the Jets, for the Steelers. I will update you right now on that. That just broke from Rich Cimini. According to the Jets injury report, Vera Tucker obviously did not practice. Chukwuma Orakfor did not practice today as well. Limited practice for Sauce and Tyrod Taylor. For the Steelers, Derek Harmon did not practice. He's trending toward doubtful for that game. Corey Trice did not practice. And Nick Herbig, with a hamstring, had a limited practice for the Steelers. So that just came out for the injury report. I felt you guys might want that, just to break you some stuff in here. Look, this is an incredibly frustrating day But like I said before, yes, Alijah Vera Tucker being hurt hurts this team. Yes, they will not be as good of an offensive line out of the gate. Yes, this puts a lot more pressure on Olu and Armand Membu, which you don't want in the beginning. But here are two things that I think this injury has done, which is not a good thing, but I do think it adds some clarity going forward. I do think with this injury, we are going to see how the staff values Tippmann. Do they view him as a guard or a center more? Because, again, they kept the center position open pretty much all preseason and played him a lot at guard. And I've been saying this offseason, don't be surprised if they view him as the long-term guard. I feel like there's a chance or a world where Tippmann is the guard next year, and they either invest in AVT and let Simpson walk. And I think now with this injury happening, I think the precedent now for the front office is to try to get Simpson locked up long-term so you have most of the positions figured out going forward. But number two, and again, this is painful because I do love Alijah Vera Tucker and the player, but the thing when we looked into this season, we talked about long-term Jets, and I brought up a couple of players throughout this offseason who I think the Jets should invest in. One guy I kept bringing up, which a lot of people hated, but now I think is a good point, especially what happened this week, which was Will McDonald. I said, if Will McDonald's on pace again to have a double-digit sack season and will have the chance to finish with 2 double-digit sack seasons in a row, try to pay him early. Because we just saw Micah Parsons. And again, I understand he's not in the same category, but now you're looking at the going rate of top pass rushers closing closer to $40 million a year. He's someone I would lock in. But going back to AVT, AVT was someone that, and I agree with Kevin here, that when we came into the season, it was, we love AVT, we love the production, but we need to see him healthy. Because as great as Alijah Vera Tucker has been, we have to look at the whole picture. And I think it's painful because we know this is a great kid. We know this is a talented player, but here's the truth. The truth is, coming into this season, which will be his 5th season in the NFL, through 4 seasons, he missed 33 games. Now, if this injury is confirmed and it's trending toward that direction, that's another 17 games. That is 50 games in 5 years. That's an average of missing 10 games a year, only playing in 7 games a year. If you are the Jets, and as much as we love AVT, if the Jets gave him a long-term contract, this fan base would look at this ownership and look at this and laugh. We love AVT, but we're paying a guy who can't stay healthy. We are paying a guy who can't stay on the field. And this was one of the biggest things I had against Mekhi Becton. Wasn't necessarily the production. My biggest thing was the guy couldn't stay healthy. The guy couldn't be on the field. Yes, when he was on the field, he was a talented player, especially run blocking. But he wasn't on the field. And the same thing goes with Alijah Vera Tucker. As much as I love the versatility that AVT brings and as talented of a player as he is, and as much as we've seen that he does have the chance to be an all-pro talent, he just can't stay healthy. And what's even more concerning, and I understand it's not the same tricep, but it's the same injuries. He's now had 2 tricep injuries. He's had 2 Achilles injuries. And now as the body's starting to get older, now he's being 26, next year's going to be 27. If you're sitting there as the Jets, it doesn't make sense to invest in him long-term. The best the Jets are going to do is offer him a 1-year proven deal. Maybe they'll give him a nice incentive or they'll give him a big guarantee for 1 year. Maybe they'll go even above the asking price, but just so they have 1-year contracts so they're not going to get killed long-term. But like I said, if he hits free agency, I get the feeling there will be one team, just one, that will give him a massive contract, but they will front load it. They will front load the first 2, maybe 2.5 years of it and say, look, we're not going to get a great offensive line. Our offensive line is horrible. Let's take a shot at Alijah Vera Tucker. If he's healthy, great. If he doesn't work out, we're not paying a lot of players right now. It doesn't kill us salary cap wise, and we can get out of that contract within 2 seasons. But it's just like, if you had asked me today, I think, unfortunately, this is the last we've seen of Alijah Vera Tucker. And it stinks. It's frustrating because this is a guy who you've seen him play exceptionally well when he's on the field, and we see the talent. I think that's what makes this more frustrating, is we know how good he is, and we know there are, I love MIJ Matt, though. I love him crunching the numbers. MIJ Matt, when you consider there are 2,200 players in the NFL, and there's an average of 4 tricep injuries a year, the likelihood is that having the same player is 1 in 302,500. Wow. That is, it's crazy. And look, at best, the best you're hoping for at this point for Vera Tucker is maybe he's back late November, December. But at that point, if you have Tittman playing guard and you have Myers playing center and they're playing well, and if you think Tittman and Simpson are your long-term guard pairs, why are you going to give reps to Alijah Vera Tucker at that point in the season unless there's injuries? So it's really frustrating, and it's devastating for the Jets' short and long-term O-line. I mean, let's just call it what it is, because you were hoping AVT could be healthy this year, make an impact this season, especially in the run game, and potentially be a long-term extension. And look, for teams, you want your first-round picks to get that second contract. We've seen with Garrett. We've seen it with Sauce. We're probably going to see it with Jermaine. But with AVT, you were hoping that he could prove he could be healthy, be a great player, be locked up long-term, and have another answer on this offensive line. And unfortunately, what this injury does today is it creates questions, and it's questions that you don't want for the Jets. And these are the questions. Is Tittman the long-term guard or center on this team? Is John Simpson now going to have to be invested in long-term? Is AVT completely done with the Jets, which I think is likely? Can Olu really pick it up in year 2? And can Membu now, who again will have his warts this year, will he be able to overcome that more quickly, or will he struggle because he's now going to have a guy next to him that's playing slightly out of position either way? And these are difficult questions for the Jets, and they're questions that we, of course, didn't want to be answering the Wednesday before the regular season. And it's questions where, okay, if this happened in the final preseason game or two, we understand it. It's football. But I think what is the more frustrating thing, and why this is really hurting to the Jets and their fan base, is because you're sitting there going, how does this happen in a practice? And the sad truth is, it's not as it happens in practice. It's not likely to happen in practice, but that doesn't mean it never happens in practice. And it's so frustrating because this, to me, is a big game with the Steelers. This feels like one of the games that could be a winnable game for the Jets, and you get this punch in your mouth before the season even starts. But as frustrating as it is, it's football. Guys get injured. It's up for the next person to step up and play well. It's up for the coaching staff to figure it out. It's up to Tanner Engstrom and this offensive staff to figure out how to make it work. That's football. You're not going to make it a full season healthy. There's going to be other injuries on this team on both sides of the football. And the big thing is, can Aaron Glenn, Tanner Engstrom, and this team help? Because I'll tell you what the last coaching staff did. They did not help. Nathaniel Hackett, never forget, and I brought Micah Parsons earlier, and I think it's a good point to bring up again. Never forget when the offensive line coach was screaming for Nathaniel Hackett to give Dwayne Brown help because Micah Parsons was taking his lunch money and his dinner money for good measure, and they didn't. The last coaching staff, one of the things that really disturbed, I think, a lot of us Jet fans was when you saw guys were struggling or the holes on this team because of injuries and just simple things. that we as fans can see. And look, we're not football experts as fans, but we can see something is clearly not working. And they just ignored it. Nathaniel Hackett ignoring the fact that Breece Hall is a great pass catcher until week 8 in his first season was absolutely egregious. The fact that Dwayne Brown, who at that point in his career was completely done, the fact that the team refused to put a back to chip or a tight end over there just to slow Parsons down slightly was disturbing. And the big thing now with this coaching staff is, okay, you lose a great piece on your offensive line. How do you adjust? And I'm very curious, and I don't think we're going to know the answer until Sunday. Is it a Myers at center, Tippmann at guard? Is it vice versa? Myers at guard, Tippmann at center? Could it be a surprise? Could Newman be at guard and Tippmann be at center? We won't know until we get to the game time. And the big thing, too, is if that combo isn't working, what does this team do to change it? If, let's say it's Newman and he's struggling at guard, do you move Tippmann to guard or do you move Myers out there? Is there a world where Membu is struggling at right tackle? Okay, we're going to add help with Ruckert over there or Mason Taylor or a tight end over there because he's really struggling. That, to me, is going to be key for this team. And it's going to test this coaching staff early because, let's face it, they were not expecting this adversity. None of us were. This was something that happened in a one-on-one drill in practice today. It's freakish. It sucks that it happens. It feels like, of course, it happens to the Jets. But here's the thing. This coaching staff has to move on. And I also feel the sad truth of this is likely they're going to have to move on for Alijah Vera Tucker long-term, which is painful because of the investment this team has made in him and the talent we see that he has. But unfortunately, when you can't get on the football field, it doesn't help you long-term. Again, comments below, your thoughts on the AVT injury. What offensive line combinations would you like to see? Any potential fill-ins that I haven't talked about on the offensive line for Alijah Vera Tucker as well? Please let me know in the comments as well. One thing I am curious too, now, I don't think Orakfor will kick inside the guard. He, again, we know didn't love being moved to left tackle, let alone right tackle last year. Max Mitchell's a name I'd keep an eye on as well as the season goes on. I don't think he offers much. Now, the big one is Esa Pohl from Kansas City. Again, had a really good preseason, someone the Jets had for a top 30 visit. Big guy, 6'6", 6'7", 320. I know I think the Jets were looking at him as a swing tackle, but this is someone that's played both guard and tackle in college. It's a name I'd keep an eye on. I don't think week 1, but I'd be curious in practice if we start seeing him get guard reps. I just think that could be someone to keep an eye on. Again, the Jets made a very conscious effort to get him during the waiver period, and they were able to bring him in. And again, a lot of people were not happy from Kansas City, but this is someone that I'd keep an eye on. I mean, the Jets brought him in, I think, to be their long-term swing tackle, but if they feel he can make the transition to guard, and if they feel like he can move people a little bit at the guard position, his biggest thing I noticed, I noticed he really cleaned it up. And again, it's hard against the second teamers. I thought his footwork looked very good at left tackle during this preseason, but a lot of the things he had were what you see with tackles that struggles, footwork, sometimes having to deal with those smaller, speedy rushers coming off the edge. And I thought that gets negated a little bit when you kick inside more to the guard position. I think that's one of the reasons why you saw Becton have better success at the guard position. Again, he also had great talent around him, but the lack of footwork that he has and the lack of speedy footwork with those quicker edge rushers gets a bit more negated when you're inside and you can work in that phone booth as opposed to being alone on an island against some of the premier edges in the NFL. Again, comments below, your thoughts on the AVT injury, your thoughts on what offensive line combinations that they can do going forward. Love to hear your thoughts. Those are just a couple of my thoughts there as well. So, I mean, the big thing, look, is this just stinks. You never want to see a big injury like this to your team. I know it happens, but you don't like to see it in practice. And it feels like it sucks some of the air out of this preseason. Out of this first game. Like, it just feels like this fan base has gotten punched in the gut again. It's like, it just sometimes feels unreal. But the big thing, too, is you just got to see how this team adjusts. And I think you're going to see a lot from Aaron Glenn. I mean, the big thing with Aaron Glenn in Detroit last year was doesn't matter how many people were down. We got to go out there and we got to kick and scrap. Now, I will say, do I think this means maybe this costs them a game or two this year? Probably. I think the best case scenario is you hope this is an 8-win, 9-win team. But at this point, they're probably closer to 7. And it stinks. But especially when you're a team that wants to dictate running the football and you lose arguably your best, most consistent run blocker, it's going to have an impact. I'm curious to see how much of an impact it has on the interior run. I think this team was going to run on AVT a lot this year. I think a great example was the Giant game in the preseason when it was 3rd and 8 and they still called the running play on a 3rd and 8. And now we're going to have to see how this team gets creative. And for Tanner Engstrom, look, this is going to be a challenge. There's no question about this. Is this offensive line staff going to be good enough to get these guys up to par? Is this going to be a staff that can develop these backups so they're in a position where they don't look overwhelmed? I'm not saying the Jets' offensive line, especially in pass pro, has to be great, but they just cannot look unprepared. There were games last year, Max Mitchell and Carter Warren did not look prepared. They did not look ready to be on a football field last year. And I think it's very telling that Carter Warren was one of the first cuts from the Jets, that this is something that the Jets have put a lot of emphasis in, is rebuilding this offensive line. They've added a lot of bodies. Of course, we saw the waiver period as well. But look, it's frustrating. Again, like any injury at this point on the offensive line would have been frustrating. Any big injury news that was coming out, but I think the biggest person I feel bad for is AVT, because this really could be a life-altering injury. Because let's be honest, this was going to, if he comes out this year having a great season, he's going to get paid and be one of the highest paid guards in the NFL. I still think there's a chance where AVT can still get a decent contract next year, but obviously this is going to have a huge impact on this team. And I think it's a good sign, too, that John Simpson is out there practicing for the Jets right now. I think that is something that's great to see, especially with the guard position. But look, it's frustrating. Now, if you want some optimism, Tippmann has played guard. I think he can play a very good guard. But now the question is, how are they at center? Because, once again, just because Tippmann can be a really good guard, that could impact them long-term at center, especially if Myers struggles. Myers now was something that we looked at as a role player on this team, a fill-in player. Well, unfortunately now he's going to have a much bigger role on this team. Final questions coming in. Again, you can like and subscribe to Miss Everlay's content. Season preview coming on Friday. Don't miss that. And, of course, you can listen to us wherever podcasts are available and streaming. Would love to have more questions to you guys. Your thoughts on AVT's injury, your thoughts on his long-term career with the Jets, your thoughts on potential fill-ins. One I will mention right off the bat is Brandon Scherf. I've seen he's been a popular name out there. Again, pretty much has retired, hasn't been in a camp. I would not bring him in. We've already seen what happens when the Jets have brought in interior offensive linemen off the couch under Joe Douglas, and that's been a massive flop. One interesting name I would keep an eye on. Now, I don't think it will happen, but a name I would keep an eye on could be Cole Strange. Again, former first-round pick from the Patriots, really struggled at the guard position. He was cut by the Patriots a couple weeks ago. Can play center, can play guard. Again, I would at least bring him in for a workout. I think he brings you versatility on the inside. And even if you put AVT on the IR, which is likely going to happen, it now gives you another guy that has that versatility on the interior as well. But again, that's if you think he's a fit. Now, to be honest, when Cole Strange came out, I thought he was a high-end third-round pick. I thought he was a nice day 2 developmental player. You kind of wonder, too, with the Patriots who drafted him, traded up to get him, really went up and over the top to go out and get him and start him right away. Did that hurt his confidence? Did that hurt his development? He's a guy I would keep I'd keep an eye out for. Like, I look at a lot of the guard options right now, and it's like guys who are at the end of their career or guys that are kind of on the fence about retiring. And then I look at Cole Strange and I go, okay, he's still young. He might have a little extra gas because the Patriots cut him in the division. 27 years old. Looks like actually Cole Strange signed with the Browns practice squad, but I mean, they could sign him off the Browns practice squad as well. So that's someone I would keep an eye on. Now, I understand that Strange hasn't had a great NFL career, but he's played guard. He can play, only started in 2 games last year, but I would keep an eye on it. I just look at names and just to have him as a backup. It's a guy that's played over 30 games in the NFL. I mean, that's something to keep an eye on as well. Because from all indications, no matter what, AVT is going on the IR, whether it's the short term, but likely the season-ending IR. But to be honest, there's not a ton of great free agent options I really see out there. But I'm curious to see how they will deal with it. And look, I think it's important too that injuries are a huge part of the game, and it always feels you lose someone very important. One thing that this reminds me of, which I thought was very important, is when Rex Ryan's first year. I mean, one of the big losses for the Jets in Rex's first year, if you remember, was they lost Chris Jenkins. I think it was week 1. And they also lost Leon Washington, who had been a great number 2 running back and also had been a good kick returner. And the Jets, again, had to adapt, lose arguably one of the key pieces of their defense, but they were able to adjust and move on. Now, again, if Tippmann plays well at guard and Myers is serviceable at center, I'm not saying great, but serviceable, I think that they can get through this. But also, if you're Darren Muji, we saw this with the D tackle position. He was making sure to keep an eye on the waiver wire, keep an eye out there for guys that might pique some interest, guys that teams have moved off from. Who knows? Maybe there's a guard that was cut or on a practice squad. I mentioned Cole Strange that he's been keeping tabs on, and now all of a sudden you're going to have an open roster spot coming up with the IR that maybe you can go out and add another piece. Again, at this point, you're just taking shots on players. You're looking at someone that can go out there and do this. But look, with injuries, this becomes a great opportunity. This could be a changing point for Joe Tippmann. I think that his pad level and his height were difficult at times for him as a center. We obviously know the snapping concerns. Again, I think he's cleaned them up. As a guard, I think with his size at 6'6", he's got great athleticism. He's got that ability to get to the second level. Like, this could be altering where Tippmann, I think, could be a very good center. But there's a chance that he has the upside to be an exceptional guard in this league. Now the question then becomes, well, how do you address the center position? Is it a position they draft on day 2 of the draft next year? Is it a position that they address in the offseason? Is it a position that they fill from internally? Like, do they think Xavier Newman could be an answer at the center position? I mean, we'll have to see. But there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of moving parts. And the big thing why Aaron Glenn was such a highly touted coach and why I think the Jets really wanted him was because of what he did in Detroit last year. Like, Detroit didn't just have injuries. Detroit was decimated, like, to historic levels, and they were still able to function. And that is the sign of a good head coach, is not only getting the best out of your players, but adjusting to adversity, because that's what makes the National Football League. Because you're going to have injuries. You're going to have key losses for every single roster. The biggest thing is, what do you do with those rosters? Again, final questions coming in now. Make sure to use Super Chat to jump to the front of the line and get your final thoughts in here. But I'll finish with this and we'll get to your final questions. Super chat again, jump to the front of the line. For joining us on podcast, make sure to like and subscribe so you miss any of our latest episodes, and don't miss our season preview coming this Friday. But here are the final thoughts. This is going to be a big test for Tanner Engstrom, and it's going to be a big test for Aaron Glenn. It's going to now put a lot more on Armand Membou and on Olu Fashanu. It just is. There's going to be times where we're going to see this injury rear its ugly head, and we're going to be like, well, what would AVT be here? How could AVT have helped this situation? But here's also what this situation has done. I think it's giving long-term clarity that the Jets are likely going to have to look as Tippmann and Simpson as their interior guards. Because as much as we love Alijah Vera Tucker and as how talented he is and how great he is on the field, one thing is undeniable. He gets hurt. And it sucks because he's a great kid. He's a great leader. But it's not just your talent in the NFL. It's about your availability. Do you show up on Sundays? Are you physically there? And unfortunately for AVT, he hasn't been. If he misses this full season, which looks like the case at this point, that's another 17 games. AVT in his career could have played 85 football games by the end of his 5th season. He is going to miss 50 of them. Track that out. That's missing an average of 10 games a season. And unfortunately in the NFL, that's not going to get it done. And it's frustrating because this is something you didn't want before the first game. You were excited with the preseason, with how good the running game looked. But this is the reality. And the reality is in the National Football League, you have to make adjustments, and the next guy up has to make an impact. And we're going to see how that impacts this team in week 1, how it impacts this team through the regular season, and also how this will impact how they address the roster construction going into 2026, because this injury has a lot of levels, both in the short and long term of this franchise. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Rich Sports Talk. We will be here live throughout the regular season. Again, we will give our season preview against the Steelers on Friday with a special guest coming up. You don't want to miss that. I'll give you all the details, so make sure to like and subscribe on the channel. Also, we will be here live after every Jets game this season. So we will be here on Sunday after the Jets-Steelers game, giving our instant thoughts and reactions, our first thoughts on Aaron Glenn's first game coaching the Jets, Justin Fields' first game as quarterback as the Jets, and, of course, the offensive line and their performance, especially after the Alijah Vera Tucker injury. All that and a lot more, so make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure to jump on us live, super chat to jump to the front of the line, and get your comments and thoughts in after the game. So if you're going to MetLife and you're jumping in your car, make sure to join the live stream on YouTube. You can check us out after the game if you're at home. Would love to hear from you guys. Again, you guys help make this channel and create such great interaction with our fans. And again, thank you everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you here after every single Jets game this season here on Rich Sports Talk, your home for all the latest and greatest on the New York Jets.